All right. All right. So, my name is Shalom, and I am a Nigerian, Northern Nigerian, born and raised. And I've lived in the U.S. For 15 years or so, 15 plus years. And two of those years I served with a community of young black professionals. So I've spent a lot of time in the black community in the United States, and obviously lived as a black person in the United States. And so, therefore, some of my experiences are what I speak of. So, these are just some of my personal experiences in the United States living as a black person. The differences I have come to notice and observe between Africans and African Americans, and what I believe to be the divide and a potential solution to being on the same page. So, again, these are based on my personal experiences. May not apply to everybody, but this is what I have come to find in my 15 years when I lived in the States. Um, I'm currently in Mexico, and a little bit of my background. Like I said, my name is Shalom. I was born and raised in northern Nigeria. I am Hausa Tangale, that's my tribe, and moved to the United States in my teens as a teenager. So, initial experiences moving to the United States, obviously, very different community, very different culture, very different society. And um, yes, it did come as a surprise that I got more made fun of and backlash from the black Americans, from African Americans, more than any other race or culture. Um, and so that was shocking. And as you could tell, my English is pretty good. I think that's a result of having been made fun of so much that I had to adapt really quickly, both in my clothing and my language, etc. So that was initial. And as I experienced America some more, obviously, other people don't care that you're Nigerian or you're African American. They treat us all the same. So my experiences as a black man, I think, are very similar in the states to anybody else. African American or other. Um, the discrimination, the harassment, all of it. I've experienced it. Um, and so, I have, at this point, I have a lot more empathy for African Americans, black people in America. I do believe strongly that anybody black in America is still a slave, and that has to do with a certain type of enslavement, specifically the mental aspect to it. Um, So, there's the physical slavery, which isn't there as much anymore. However, we can see it through jail and the system put into place to, put people in jail because it is a business. Um, so it's definitely still there, just in a different form. And then you have the mental side, and that's probably the most challenging, the toughest, and the one that will probably take the longest. Um, because that is the true solution to a lot of issues going on in the black community, not just in the United States, but around the world. Has to do with our mental slavery. So, yeah, like I said, I have a lot of empathy now for black Americans. And the disconnect between Africans and African Americans really has to do with an understanding of what most African Americans talk about, which is the systematic oppression. Now, what is the systematic oppression? And sometimes you hear that word thrown around a lot. And as an African, I never really knew what that was. I hear it thrown around a lot, and people are angry, and rightfully so. until I experienced it. And systematic oppression has a lot to do with the laws and the system that has been placed around those laws to either protect or incriminate certain people. And you can see that it's very skewed to incriminating black people specifically, but minorities in general. So some of that systematic oppression leads often to easier ways for black people to be locked up. You can see it even in the jail system, in the court system. You know, you are definitely not judged the same way as a black person in America. You know, you're not treated the same way. There is no respect for black Americans, and you can see this system in so many different ways within. So often Africans, we come into the United States and we are not aware of this. What we know from dealing with Americans in our home countries, I'll speak specifically for Nigeria, has to do with situations most of the time where they come in bringing something, whether it's, you know, through missionary work or other. Oftentimes it's mixed with some kind of religion, specifically Christianity. So it's mixed with religion, these good intentions. And so often Africans, their experiences with Americans on the African continent are often good experiences because they feel that these people are bringing something of value: education, religion, gifts, clothes, food, whatever it is, all these aid type situations. And that has created something mental in a lot of Africans to believe that Americans are all good and treat all well, specifically us black people. They have good intentions for us and treat us well. And then you come to America and then you realize that no, we're treated very differently. Okay? And that's not something you know as an African until you move. And then once you move and you're living in the United States, Africans, when we move, we see opportunity because America does present a lot of opportunity to take advantage of if you know what to look for and if you come with the right eyes to see. So, you know, often Africans come in with the intentions of getting a great education and then getting a great job. So when we do come in, despite seeing the discrimination and the hatred of our own people, instead of internalizing that and taking that personally, what most Africans do is find a solution for themselves, which is often to just be quiet and take advantage of the good education they feel they're getting and move on and just use that. Pretty much do what they can to just take advantage of what they can in the moment and move on and not complain about the other things. Often that's because, listen, I don't know what the worst ghetto is in America, but I can guarantee you it's nothing close to even some of the places, so in my village, you know? So sometimes when you see it from that perspective, then the reasonable thing to say is, I mean, what is there to complain about? It's still better than some of the situations we come from, right? Or some of the situations we know our family members are in. So we just see the opportunity and choose to go after that rather than complain about the negative aspects to it. So it's a little bit more of a different view in terms of being more optimistic rather than a skeptic. Why am I speaking on it? I'm speaking on it because I have gone through this experience, being that I was born and raised Nigerian, didn't come here till a teenager, so I still hold a lot of my cultural and values, and just the entire um, you know, the entire experience has been different for me.